Good evening, everyone. It's a little after our scheduled start time of 7:30. Thank you all so much for being here tonight. Please rise and join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Please join me in a moment of silence. Thank you, and thank you again for joining us this evening. Today is Monday, September 17th. This is the regular meeting of Lakewood City Council. Madam Clerk, please call the roll.
Anderson.
Present.
Bullock.
Here.
George. Here. Litton.
Here.
O'Leary.
Here.
O'Malley. Rader.
Here. Thank you. I guess before we get to the reading and disposal of the minutes, I'd like to make a motion to excuse the absence of our colleague from Ward 4, Dan O'Malley, who unfortunately is out of town tonight, otherwise would, of course, be here and extends his regrets. I'll second that. We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor say aye. Aye. All those opposed? That motion passes. Thank you.
Reading and disposal of the minutes of the regular meeting of council held September 4th, 2018.
Move to dispose without the necessity of a reading. Second. Motion's been made and seconded. Any discussion on the motion to dispose of the minutes without reading? Hearing none. All those in favor say aye. Aye. All those opposed? That motion passes. And before we get to our first docket item this evening, without objection from my council colleagues, I would move that we move items number 13 and 14 to the top of our docket this evening. Second. Motion's been made and seconded. Discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor say aye. Aye. All those opposed? Thank you. Madam Clerk?
Item 13, communication from Council President O'Leary regarding resolution to appoint Maureen McHugh-Bach as Clerk of Council.
Thank you. Colleagues, it is my privilege and pleasure to inform you that following this communication is a resolution appointing Maureen McHugh-Bach, Clerk of Lakewood City Council. As you know, Maureen has served council capably and diligently since 2012, and most recently as our interim clerk since the end of May. Maureen has excelled through changes in councils, changes in budget cycles and budget seasons, passionate debates over civic issues, calls from curious residents, and curious calls from residents, and the many other idiosyncrasies and challenges of serving council and the citizens of Lakewood. Throughout, Maureen has repeatedly demonstrated her strong desire and ability to make Lakewood and the council office better through innovative, considerate, and respectful service to all members of the community and to all who enter council chambers or the council office. I know that we all look forward to continuing to work with Ms. Bach in her new role and welcome her enthusiastically to this new chapter in the history of the office of council clerk. Thank you. Move to receive and file that communication. Second. A motion's been made and seconded. Any discussion on the communication? Hearing none. All those in favor of receiving and filing the communication say aye. Aye. All those opposed? That motion passes.
Item 14, Resolution 90-2218, a resolution appointing Maureen McHugh-Bach as Clerk of Council.
Move to adopt. Second. A motion's been made and seconded. Any discussion on the motion to adopt? Yes, Councilman Bullock.
Thank you, Mr. President. It's with great excitement and satisfaction that I will support tonight's motion and resolution. I think you did a very eloquent job of an accurate job of describing Maureen's qualifications and job performance. We did a thorough job search and interviewed many applicants, and many were very well qualified and have talents and qualifications and could capably serve, but Maureen had all of those, plus experience, and plus we've gotten to know, and I think affectionately call her as a colleague all these years, and so I look forward to supporting the resolution and having her as a colleague for many more years to come. Thank you.
Thank you. Yes, Councilwoman George.
Thank you. I'd like to echo Councilman Bullock's sentiments and say, Ms. Bach, you've done a phenomenal job filling the role as interim clerk, and I very much look forward to working with you and fully support this resolution, and we are lucky to have you.
I would just add my agreement, but Councilman Rader.
Oh, yeah, of course. I mean, we're very lucky to have you, Maureen. Thank you for the work you've done and look forward to you serving this role for a very long time. And I also have to say, we had, as Councilman Bullock said, we had some very qualified people. So on the record, I want to say thank you to everyone who applied. There were some actually really, really interesting people, cool people that I hope apply for jobs in the future here on council. To serve council, rather. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilman Litton.
Thank you, Mr. President. Maureen, you know you have big shoes to fill. Of course, that's assuming we all go forward with things here in a second, but I certainly look forward to supporting your candidacy. I'm excited by changes you've made already. It's clear there's a lot of potential here. You raised your own bar to have to meet. So we really, really, really look forward to working with you, and thank you for all you've done.
Any other comment? I think that's, couldn't have said it better myself. No, I just, I want to add my excitement and thanks to you for everything that you've done for council to date, and also especially in this transitional period. I know I really appreciate it as well as the other members of council do, that you've been able to make that transition as so seamless as you have, and that's really been great. So without any further discussion, all those in favor of adoption, say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? That motion passes. Should we do a photo?
Sure.
Yeah.
That'd be nice. Okay.
Let me take the photos on my iPad, and
I want council to be in it.
I know, but still, we'll get someone else to take some of them.
Everybody ready to say cheese?
Okay. We have one more formality here. So if you would please raise your right hand. Raise your right hand and repeat after me. I, Maureen McHugh-Bach, being first duly sworn according to law, upon my oath depose and say that I will support the Constitution of the United States and the state of Ohio, and the third amended charter and ordinances of the city of Lakewood, and will faithfully discharge the duties of the office of Clerk of Council for the city of Lakewood, Ohio. Congratulations. Unfortunately, now she has to keep track of that piece of paper.
I took about 70 pictures, so that should do you. Okay.
And in continuing with the trend of going slightly unusually about our business this evening, we have one other item. At our previous meeting, we recognized that September is National Suicide Prevention Awareness Month. And unfortunately, we weren't able to have our representative from NAMI join us at that point in time, but she is able to be here with us this evening. So without further ado, I'm going to, if there's no objection from my council colleagues, recognize at the top of our meeting just briefly Director Gelsomino, if you would care to introduce our guest.
This is Elaine Reams, and she is with NAMI. Elaine has been a very committed partner to the Lakewood Area Collaborative, and as many of you are aware, that partnership helps us problem solve in ways that we would never be able to do on our own. So I'm very grateful that Elaine was willing to come. She felt that even though this was 2 weeks later, she was so impressed and grateful that a legislative body made this effort that she wanted to be here in person. So.
And she's a heck of a photographer as well.
Thank you, Ms. Reams.
That's right. That's the real reason I'm here.
Yeah.
I don't know if you can hear me okay. First of all, Ellen Ream, National Alliance on Mental Illness of Greater Cleveland. And I want to thank you so much for the opportunity to be here this evening. As Tony said, I have been involved with the Lakewood Collaborative, and they have, throughout the years, been very forthright in providing programming and information about mental illness and realizing the importance of it in the community. That said, I would like to thank the elected officials in the city of Lakewood for acknowledging suicide and for looking at September 2018 as Suicide Prevention Month. People are afraid that if we talk about suicide, somebody may commit it, and that's not true. Just as with mental illness, we need to have these conversations. So when city governments, elected officials go about raising that awareness, then we can hope to provide education and provide support and provide treatment to help those individuals survive. 90% of individuals that commit suicide have an underlying mental health diagnosis. So providing that education, getting the word out, getting people talking about it is really the best thing that we can possibly do to help people with mental illness. At NAMI, we're one of the local resources that's available to the city and to the community. We provide free education, support, advocacy, and resources for people with mental illness and their family members as well. I also like to recognize the City of Lakewood's police department, and that they spearheaded the West Shore CIT Crisis Intervention Team Training Consortium. They actually have a training that started today, I believe, but they have dedicated to training their officers in a 40-hour training in dealing with mental illness. Has a lot of positive results within the communities, and kudos for them for making it happen. So thank you.
Thank you so much.
Okay.
And thank you again for being here tonight and sharing that important message with us. Without objection, we'll then move into our first agenda item.
Item 1, Committee of the Whole Report regarding meeting held September 17, 2018.
Thank you. Committee of the Whole met immediately prior to our meeting this evening. We had 3 items on our agenda, the first of which was a discussion of the sale of certain fixture and large items of equipment from the Lakewood Hospital site to the highest bidders that had been identified. Council had a discussion regarding the prices that were obtained by the city, expectations for those prices, removal of the equipment, liability following removal, possible reuse by the city that was explored, as well as other relevant topics, and ultimately recommended adoption of that resolution by council this evening. We then had an update from Public Works and Director Joe Benno regarding various ongoing projects in the city. Council members had an opportunity to ask questions, which they did. There were a number of things discussed, including roadwork projects, as well as a slide at Edwards Park. I would refer you in advance to our minutes from that meeting, which will be provided for more details as to all that was discussed. The same goes for the Planning Department update, which also touched largely on the proposal for a Raising Cane's restaurant at the site formerly that was a Bob Evans near Bunce Road on Detroit. Those discussions will continue, and we hope to have both of them back soon for a continued update and a chance for more questions. Move to receive and file that report.
Second.
A motion's been made and seconded. Any discussion on the motion to receive and file that report? Hearing none, all those in favor say aye. Aye. All those opposed, that motion passes.
Item 2, resolution number 9017-18, a resolution authorizing the Director of Finance, Mayor, or Director of Planning and Development to sell certain obsolete equipment at the site of the former Lakewood Hospital.
Move to adopt.
Second.
A motion's been made and seconded. Any discussion on the motion to adopt? Hearing none, all those in favor say aye. Aye. All those opposed, that motion passes.
Item 3, Finance Committee report regarding meeting held September 10th, 2018.
Move to defer.
Second.
A motion's been made and seconded. Any discussion on the motion to defer? I'll actually note at this juncture that having had both a discussion with the chair, Councilman O'Malley, as well as a chance to discuss with our newly appointed clerk, Ms. Bach, the Finance Committee did, at its meeting on September the 10th, unanimously recommend adoption of the ordinance that follows what would have been Councilman O'Malley's report, Ordinance 37-18, regarding the transfer in advance of certain funds. And so I note that simply to bring to your attention this evening. Obviously, we still have the motion to defer Councilman O'Malley's report to be heard at a later date. Any additional discussion from council? Hearing none, all those in favor of the deferral say aye. Aye. All those opposed, that motion passes.
Item 4, ordinance number 3718, an ordinance authorizing the transfer in advance of certain funds.
Move to adopt.
Second.
Motion's been made and seconded. Any discussion on the motion to adopt? Hearing none, all those in favor say aye. Aye. All those opposed, that motion passes.
Item 5, Housing Committee report regarding meeting held September 10th, 2018.
Thank you. Vice President Anderson.
Thank you very much. Yes, indeed, the Housing Committee met on the evening of September 10, 2018. Present were myself and Councilmember O'Malley. Also, Councilperson George was in attendance. In regards to 3918, we didn't have a recommendation for 3918. We've tabled it for further discussion. And I know that Councilwoman George has asked for some additional information from the Law Department in regards to our consideration of 3918. So look for a second discussion to take place in the near future, again on 3918. In regards to 1818, I believe this is our third or fourth lengthy conversation concerning this recommended ordinance, which is now recommended by the Housing Committee. So all members of the committee present voted in support of recommending 1818 after, again, a series of lengthy conversations about how best to amend or suggest amending the codified ordinances to make some updates with respect to the regular regulation of condominium associations and unit owners in the city. So I commend this ordinance 1818 to the recommendation of the committee for adoption by all of council. Move to receive and file this brief oral report.
Second. A motion's been made and seconded. Any discussion on the motion to receive and file that Housing Committee report? Hearing none, all those in favor say aye. Aye. All those opposed, that motion passes.
Item 6, ordinance number 3918, and ordinance amending various sections of Chapter 1306, Property Maintenance and Safety Code, in order to update the code so as to eliminate the threat of warrantless searches from the code.
Thank you. Noting Vice President Anderson's report, however, I have had a conversation with Councilman O'Malley by phone this afternoon. He requested consideration from his colleagues as to a motion to defer, which I will make here this evening. I move to defer. Second. I have a motion and a second. Any discussion on the motion to defer? Councilman O'Malley had indicated that this was a very, very extensively discussed ordinance that took a great deal of cooperation and deliberation, and he just wished to be able to conclude the process with additional remarks, which he obviously was not able to make this evening. So for that reason, he's asked for the deferral. Any additional discussion at this time?
Mr. Chair.
Yes, I'm sorry, Law Director Butler.
Thank you. I believe the motion on the floor is to defer item number 6, ordinance 3918, and the ordinance that Councilman O'Malley may have requested deferral on is ordinance 1818, which is item number 7.
Thank you for that.
Both ought to be deferred.
I was going to say thank you for pointing that out. I do appreciate that. So with my previous comments applying prospectively to item 7, I would note that item 39-18 also would be deferred at this juncture, given that it's only on second reading here tonight, and also pursuant to Vice President Anderson's discussion and his report that further discussion in committee is warranted. Thanks.
Motion to, or second the motion to defer 3918.
Thank you. Motion and a second. Any additional discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All those opposed? That motion passes.
Item 7, substitute ordinance number 1818, an ordinance amending section 130643, housing and vacant property license, and section 130644, license application form and fee, in order to update the code with respect to the regulation of condominium associations and unit owners in the city.
Mr. President.
Yes, Vice President Anderson.
Yes, in light of our colleague's inability to be here tonight, and the fact that this was his original legislation, although the committee had voted to recommend passage tonight, happy to defer, at least I'd move to defer this item 1818 until our next full council hearing.
Second. A motion's been made and seconded. Any additional discussion from council? Yes, Councilman Bullock.
Thank you, Mr. President. I know that there's been quite a lot of work on this, and those who have been able to regularly attend the Housing Committee are up to speed on it. I am not among that number. So as we contemplate passage next meeting, I presume, of a pretty significant policy improvement and really supplementing our housing strategy for a whole additional category of housing stock, I'd certainly welcome and appreciate a recap of the significance of what this does, what new tools it provides to us, whether that represents a change or an update to our inspection schedule and regime. You know, all the policy work that you've done. If you could recap that for us in 2 weeks, that would be wonderful. Thanks.
Mr. President.
Yes, Vice President Anderson.
Great request, and I pledge to make a more formal written report available to all members of council via email and in advance of our next conversation.
Thank you. I also would note for members of the audience, as well as my council colleagues, that Councilman O'Malley correctly pointed out that by its terms, these changes would take effect first in the year 2020. And so by a slight delay in 2 weeks in passage, we are not throwing the issuance of housing licenses for 2019 into chaos. So noted. Yes, Vice President Anderson.
Formally, the proposed changes would take place in October, November of 2019, but the point is still accurate.
Thank you for that clarification. Any additional discussion on the motion to defer? Hearing none. All those in favor say aye. Aye. All those opposed, that motion passes.
Item 8, Public Works Committee report regarding meeting held September 10, 2018.
Councilman Rader.
Thank you, Mr. President. So, yes, there was a meeting on September 10th of the Public Works Committee. All members were present, myself, Vice President Anderson, Councilman Bullock, as well as City Engineer Papke and Director Benno. So the subject of the meeting was two resolutions, 9018-18 and 9019-18. Both deal with, well, every year the city applies for some money, some grants through the Ohio Public Works Commission. And this year we applied for monies for two projects. The city scores, actually the commission scores these projects pretty toughly. So Dr. Benno and Engineer Papke have their work cut out for them in selecting the right projects that they believe will have the best chance at getting that money. They've been very successful in years past, getting two projects the last few years, I believe. I think 1 year in the last couple of years, you had one project that got through, and then we had one that was pretty close, which we received some low-interest loans for. So even if we don't make it, sometimes we get some low-interest loans. It's really interesting to learn about how that program worked, and it sounds like the projects they selected, which have to do with water line replacement on 3 streets and rehabbing some sewer outfalls and erosion protection on the north end of Summit Avenue, seem to be great projects. The committee went ahead and recommended that for adoption, both of these for adoption tonight. So that'll be on the docket up here next. So that'll conclude my communication. I'll go ahead and move to receive and file the communication.
Second, motion's been made and seconded. Any discussion on the motion to receive and file that report? Hearing none, all those in favor say aye. Aye. All those opposed, that motion passes.
Item 9, Resolution 9018-18, a resolution authorizing the mayor or his designee to prepare and submit an application to participate in the Ohio Public Works Commission State Capital Improvement Program, Local Transportation Improvement Program, or any other appropriate Ohio Public Works Commission program that the 2020 water main replacement project qualifies for, and to execute contracts as required.
Move to adopt.
Second.
A motion's been made and seconded. Any discussion on the motion to adopt? Hearing none, all those in favor say aye. Aye. All those opposed, that motion passes.
Item 10, Resolution Number 9019-18, a resolution authorizing the mayor or his designee to prepare and submit an application to participate in the Ohio Public Works Commission State Capital Improvement Program, Local Transportation Improvement Program, or any other appropriate Ohio Public Works Commission program that the Summit Outfall Replacement Project qualifies for, and to execute contracts as required.
Move to adopt.
Second.
Motion's been made and seconded. Any discussion on that motion to adopt? Hearing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, that motion passes.
Item 11, Ordinance Number 3818, an ordinance repealing Section 14916, military leave compensation, and enacting a new section in its place to conform this section to Section 592305 of the Ohio Revised Code.
Move to defer.
Second.
A motion's been made and seconded. Any discussion on the motion to defer? I just note for those who are joining us for the first time or are generally unfamiliar with our procedure that some of these items in our old business section of the agenda that we're deferring here this evening, we're doing so because they're on second reading tonight, and Ohio law requires or suggests that unless it's an emergency, we read things 3 times prior to passage, and so that's the standard by which we do things. So. This item is also one example of something that's on second reading here tonight. So any additional discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor of deferral say aye. Aye. All those opposed, that motion passes.
Item 12, Ordinance Number 4018, an ordinance to approve the editing and inclusion of certain ordinances as parts of the various component codes of the codified ordinances, and to provide for the publication of such new matter.
Move to defer.
Second.
A motion's been made and seconded. Any discussion on the motion to defer? Hearing none, all those in favor say aye. Aye. All those opposed, that motion passes.
Item 15, communication from Councilmember Bullock regarding the appointment to the Citizens Advisory Committee.
Councilmember Bullock.
Dear colleagues. Thank you. Dear colleagues, it is my pleasure to appoint Tyler Allen to the Citizens Advisory Council. His term will begin immediately and will expire on December 31, 2018. I had the chance to meet Mr. Allen when he first expressed interest in serving in Lakewood as a member of the Resiliency Task Force. Since then, Mr. Allen has remained interested in sharing his talents with the city in a variety of community forums and venues. He's an engineer whose work is focused on renewable energy and in healthcare facility design. I'm confident he will contribute to the diversity of the Citizen Advisory Committee, and I appreciate his enthusiasm for public service. Sincerely, move to receive and file that communication.
Second.
Motion's been made and seconded. Any discussion on the motion to receive and file? Hearing none, all those in favor say aye. Aye. All those opposed, that motion passes.
Item 16, communication from Councilmember O'Malley regarding council budget priorities resolution.
Councilmember O'Malley wanted you all to know that you do not get out of the Finance Committee meeting next Monday. However, he did request that I move to defer his report this evening, and I will do so. Move to defer.
Second.
A motion's been made and seconded. Any discussion on the motion to defer the report? Hearing none, all those in favor say aye. Aye. All those opposed, that motion passes.
Item 17, resolution number 9020-18, a resolution to formally identify agreed-upon priorities that council would like to see reflected in the 2019 budget.
Move to refer to Finance Committee.
Second.
A motion's been made and seconded. Any discussion on the motion to refer to Finance? Hearing none, all those in favor say aye. Aye. All those opposed, that motion passes.
Item 18, communication from Councilmember O'Malley regarding ordinance to ban, quote, conversion therapy for the purpose of changing sexual orientation in minors.
Thank you. At this time, I'll recognize the piece of legislation's co-signatory, Council Vice President Anderson.
Thank you, Mr. President. The Ohio Psychological Association has called on the Ohio General Assembly and other elected officials throughout the state to legislate bans on the harmful and sometimes deadly practice of so-called conversion therapy for the purpose of changing sexual orientation in minors. The attached ordinance would do just that within the limits of the city of Lakewood. Accepted science recognizes that being gay, lesbian, bisexual, or transgender as part of the natural spectrum of human identity. It is not a disease, disorder, or illness. A 2015 report of the Federal Substance Abuse and Mental Health Services Administration states, quote, interventions aimed at a fixed outcome such as gender conformity or heterosexual orientation, including those aimed at changing gender identity, gender expression, and sexual orientation, are coercive, can be harmful, and should not be part of behavioral health treatment, end quote. Many well-regarded professional organizations have added their voices to the chorus of experts opposing these dangerous practices. Among them are the American Psychological Association, the American Psychiatric Association, the American Medical Association, the American Academy of Pediatrics, the National Association of Social Workers, the American School Council Association, and a great many others. Sadly, conversion therapy is still being practiced in the state of Ohio. While we are unaware of any such therapists operating in Lakewood, we wish to send a clear message to protect the youth in our city that this practice is not welcome here. Please refer this ordinance to the appropriate committee for further consideration. Yours truly.
Thank you. Move to receive and file that communication.
Second.
A motion's been made and seconded. Any discussion on the motion to receive and file the communication? With respect to that last admonition about referral to an appropriate committee, I again had the chance to talk to Councilman O'Malley by phone this afternoon, and we'll, of course, have Vice President Anderson's thoughts on this point as well to add to the mix. But Councilman O'Malley expressed a possible preference for either Health and Human Services or Committee of the Whole for what that is worth. So any additional discussion on the motion to receive and file the communication? Yes.
Just that
Councilman Litton.
Health and Human Services has had a shortage of items to meet about this year, and we'd gladly take it up.
Thank you. Much appreciated. And I would also add that I'm very glad to see this communication on our docket this evening, and would hope that it would be welcomed favorably by any committee. So any additional discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor of receiving and filing say aye. Aye. All those opposed, that motion passes.
Item 19, ordinance number 4118, an ordinance amending Chapter 516, discrimination prohibited of the codified ordinances to prohibit any psychiatric treatment, including conversion therapy, which purpose is an attempt to change an individual's sexual orientation.
Move to refer to Health and Human Services Committee.
Second.
A motion's been made and seconded. Any discussion on the motion to refer to Health and Human Services?
President.
Yes, Vice President Anderson.
I guess I should keep these comments in hand for the committee, but the American Psychological Association opposes conversion therapy because it assumes that homosexuality is a mental health disorder. And the American Psychological Association, I believe in 1975, determined that homosexuality be removed from its official list of mental disorders. And the American Association of Psychological Association has since advocated for full civil and legal rights for all folks. And just my own thoughts in regards to counseling in general. If you really boil it down, counseling is just about trying to help someone identify something about themselves they didn't know before. It's not about converting anyone. People convert themselves. People make decisions. Counseling, therapy, it shouldn't be, the aim shouldn't be to change anyone. It should be the aim to give people the information, the empowerment to make the changes that they want to see in themselves. So I just wanted to throw that out there, and I appreciate the American Psychological Association coming to that, what now appears to be a stunning conclusion way back in 1975, that homosexuality is indeed not a mental health disorder. Look forward to the conversation.
Thank you. Any additional discussion on the motion to refer to Health and Human Services? Hearing none. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? That motion passes.
Item 20, communication from Law Director Butler regarding resolution approving purchase agreement for Trinity Lutheran Church property.
Thank you. Law Director Butler.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I won't read the communication verbatim, but just know that following the communication is a resolution that would permit the mayor to sign a purchase agreement for the purchase of the Trinity, now vacant Trinity Lutheran Church property between Westlake and Hall Avenues in the city's western end. The purchase price that we've negotiated with the principals at the church is $625,000, and it does not come with any free passes to heaven. But we are, however, pleased with the outcome of the negotiations and would seek your favorable consideration of the resolution in a committee of your choosing. Thank you.
Thank you. I do seem to remember something about the church going out of the indulgences business some time ago.
A while back.
Yeah.
Particularly this one.
But I appreciate the negotiating efforts for us, nonetheless. Move to receive and file that communication. A motion's been made and seconded. Any discussion on the motion to receive and file? I would just add that I'm excited to see this communication, the accompanying resolution on our docket this evening. I think we were all aware of when there was some movement relative to this property earlier this year that triggered a lot of community concern and consternation, I think rightly, about potential impacts on the neighborhood and what we could potentially do and expect to see in the future with respect to this property, which is an important property along our Detroit commercial corridor, and is certainly now, hopefully, as it comes under the city's control, in a position to be put to some use that either serves or, at the very least, respects and harmonizes the public use and neighboring uses to that site, which are residential and also, obviously, it has important implications for the things that we work towards on a regular basis, like the walkability of our commercial corridor and the general aesthetic that we try to achieve in Lakewood. So really happy to see this and think that it's a great strategic move for the city, and hope that we're able to talk about it and ultimately come to support this resolution. Any additional discussion on the motion to receive and file the communication? Yes, Councilman Rader.
Thank you, Mr. President. Yeah, I think this is the right direction to really play a super active role in how we do our development. And this is as you mentioned earlier, Mayor, this is the most direct way you can possibly do it, actually go in there and purchase the property. First question, the only question I'll have here, I'll save the rest for the committee, is that $625,000, where does that, what is that fund and how does that work?
Director Pay?
The purchase of the property would come from the Land Acquisition Fund, which is currently has $5 million that has been set aside. It was from an estate tax proceeds, and we've been holding it for quite some time, and this is a perfect use for that source.
Thank you. Councilwoman George, did you have a question?
No,
Okay.
I'll save it for committee. Thank you.
Okay, great. Thank you. Yes, Councilman Bullock.
Thank you, Mr. President. So I'm welcome the proposed docket item. I wasn't aware that this was in the works. So, and I know we'll get a more robust briefing in committee. Nevertheless, I'm love to learn now, as at least some preliminaries. So, we're at a very advanced stage of negotiations, but until this would become final, nothing's final. But it seems that the administration's been in negotiations and is reaching satisfactory enough terms such that you do recommend those terms to us. Is that accurate?
That's correct. I mean, customarily, we don't just submit ideas that might or might not happen. In this case, we felt the obligation to not only pursue the strategic advantages here, but also whether or not it was commercially viable for us to come to an agreement. And we have a meeting of the minds between the two parties. So the next step then is to seek your approval. Nothing happens until you provide that approval. And through our discussions, we'll explain what we think is the strategic advantage, short-term steps that we can take to secure good use, and then long-term potential options. But basically, it allows us to control the outcome of the property as owner. It allows us to more vigorously explore adaptive reuse of a church, which is very challenging, but we probably have more incentive and have a different return on investment calculus than a private developer would have. It allows us to leverage other agency funds for eventual demo or rehab, whichever we choose. And it most importantly ensures a complementary redevelopment of land use towards an area that is highly concentrated both today in terms of its traffic volume, the corner of Woodward and Detroit, but also will likely experience even more activity with development that we know is likely to be experienced in 2019 and beyond.
Well said, Mr. President, with your permission. And so presumably there's been some time sensitivity as well, given that in the private market there's negotiation and interest and bidding. So it sounds like you've been not letting the grass grow under your feet to get to this proposal.
We certainly have been watching it. It's a classic example, though. We knew the church, and it's been publicly known the church was for sale for quite some time. There have been some development partners who are interested, but their interest in strategies I don't think were complementary to what we think is the highest and best land use, especially on that particular segments. For example, Wendy's, as a fast food chain, was very interested in exploring putting up an investment. I think that would have been, for all the reasons Director Sylvester pointed out earlier in terms of traffic management and pedestrian complement, it would have been probably the worst outcome for that particular section. It made us take closer attention. There have been several potential suitors to the property that would have been good suitors, but the economics of adapting a church are very challenging, especially this particular church. So the chance to actually achieve an outcome with some really good potential partners wasn't possible, especially given the church's need to get a return off their stewardship and both for their particular mission as a church and community engagement, but also what they felt was an obligation to the parishioners. So all those forces were mixed in together, which were complicating good outcomes and creating a chance for probably a less than desirable outcome. And we felt the obligation to step into this marketplace and secure the best long-term outcome. So I think personally, I don't think it's financially in any way a negative investment. My guess is whatever we invest, we'll be able to get out. Should we choose to sell it, we may have other uses that will be higher in terms of its contribution to that particular neighborhood. And that's for us to figure out. But once we secure ownership, we have the luxury of contemplating that. There's no urgency to figuring it out other than there is a cost to holding a property. And we have to be knowledgeable about that and be respectful of that as well. The seller was somewhat motivated because as a church, they did not pay property tax, but as a landlord without a church, they would have effective January 1st. So they were particularly motivated to get a transaction done in 2018.
Thank you. That's very interesting. And you answered one of my follow-ups, which is whether we anticipated whether this investment up front of $625,000 would be all out the door, or at some point part may come back to us. And it sounds like we don't know fully. It could take a couple of different dimensions. But in terms of policymaking. I mean, I view council as a policymaking body, a priority-setting body, and a body to reflect and represent community values. We do often ask ourselves, how do you stop a drive-through, or how do you get highest and best use? So one tool in the toolbox would be an attempt to regulate across the board, but this is another one, clearly, which is to have enough budget capacity such that the city can act as a developing interest that isn't single bottom line. It's multiple bottom line, triple bottom line or more. So it's interesting. Thanks.
Thank you. I should have mentioned at the time, I believe that the intention here on the part of the administration is for a referral to committee for additional discussion. So we should have ample additional opportunity. Councilwoman George also has a question.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. President. I was going to save this for committee work, but Mayor, since you brought it up today, do you have any idea of how much the holding costs may be for this church?
We do. I'm trying to recall the number of, I mean, there's, heat is obviously the biggest one. And it's a classic example. If you hold it to be reused as is, you want to maintain the integrity of all the mechanical systems.
Right.
That's a higher price than if you mothball it. If we knew for sure that we're going to demolish any part of the structures, we would have a different approach to managing it. So we, in the short term, and we're approaching the colder weather, we'll feel some obligation. But I thought, Bryce, do you remember that number?
I don't, Mayor, but I know we have the information.
Yeah,
so
so
we can have
we'll
that
get
ready
that
for
to you.
committee.
Yeah, and committee would be great. Thanks.
Thank you.
Mr. Chair?
Yes, Law Director Butler.
Just on the topic of a committee referral, I only wanted to point out that the church is very, very intent, and the purchase agreement calls for this, on closing by the end of the year. So
yes,
in order to do that and still give us the opportunity to do all the due diligence we are permitted to do under the agreement and to make sure that the closing occurs on time, the administration is seeking council's approval of this resolution by the second meeting in October, if possible.
Understood.
Thank you.
Okay. Thank you. And I can't speak for my colleagues, but I don't think that should pose any issue. Okay. Any additional discussion on the motion to receive and file the communication? Hearing none. All those in favor say aye. Aye. All those opposed? That motion passes.
Item 21, Resolution 90-2118, a resolution authorizing the mayor and director of law to enter into a purchase agreement with the Trinity Lutheran Church, a.k.a. Trinity Lutheran Church, a.k.a. Lakewood English Evangelical Lutheran Church, an Ohio nonprofit corporation, owner of the property located at 16300 through 16400 Detroit Avenue, Lakewood, Ohio, and to execute all documents necessary to effectuate the purchase and sale according to the terms of that agreement.
Move to refer to committee of the whole.
Second.
A motion's been made and seconded. Any discussion on the motion to refer to committee of the whole?
Mr. President.
Yes, Vice President Anderson.
I'll just add my own quick commentary now. Director Sylvester and Mr. Mayor, you know, this is something that we've talked about sort of offline for the last number of years about the notion of the city being in a position to directly challenge, you know, the direction of a certain piece of property. So now we're actually in a position to put that notion into action, and I applaud this effort. I really, really do. You know, I've been a champion of this particular trajectory of the city with this particular piece of property for quite some time now, so I really am appreciative of all the effort, and I look forward to a robust discussion with all my colleagues here on council, so thank you.
Thank you. Any additional discussion on the motion to refer 90-21-18 to committee of the whole? Hearing none, all those in favor say aye. Aye. All those opposed? That motion passes.
Item 22, communication from Public Works Director Benno regarding proposed AT&T easement.
Thank you. Director Benno.
Dear members of council, please review the attached documents from AT&T for an easement on city property to place a cabinet for their Gigapower service program. This location is in the city parking lot on Madison, near Arthur, across from Barrio. A landscaping plan is also attached for the location. Please refer to the appropriate committee for further discussion, and AT&T representatives will be available at that meeting for discussion. Thank you.
Thank you. Move to receive and file that communication. Second. Motion's been made and seconded. Any discussion on the motion to receive and file? Hearing none. All those in favor say aye. Aye. All those opposed? That motion passes.
Item 23, Ordinance number 4218, an ordinance authorizing the mayor on behalf of the city to enter into an agreement necessary to grant an exclusive easement to the Ohio Bell Telephone Company, aka AT&T Ohio, for placement of and access to equipment used in the transmission of signals used in the provision of communication, video, and/or information services on property located at 15538 Madison Avenue, Lakewood, Ohio.
Move to refer ordinance 42-18 to Public Works Committee. Motion's been made and seconded. Any discussion on the motion to refer to Public Works? Hearing none. All those in favor say aye. Aye. All those opposed? That motion passes.
Item 24, liquor permit notice for Rosie's Wine House Incorporated, 14900 Detroit Avenue.
Thank you. As is our custom, we typically refer I should say we defer to the councilperson in whose ward these establishments are located. As it happens, this particular establishment is located in my ward, Ward 2. Director Butler, are we in receipt of, I think we are in receipt of a report which I think indicated that the transfer was not going to be happening imminently, but I don't know that there was any reason to object or any further notification. So at this time, I guess I would move to file without objection unless I have missed anything. Director Butler?
Mr. Chair, that accurately summarizes the report which you have received, and I will just add that you've received reports on all the remaining liquor transfers tonight as well.
Thank you. Therefore, I would move to file without objection. Motion's been made and seconded. Any discussion on the motion to file without objection? Hearing none. All those in favor say aye. Aye. All those opposed? That motion passes.
Item 25, liquor permit transfer to Mad Max, 13601 0305 Detroit Avenue.
Thank you. This is a Ward 3 establishment. Councilman Litton.
Yes, in receipt of the report, as Director Butler stated, and no statutory reason to object. And I'd only add that my 10-year-old daughter and perhaps myself are excited at the growth in macaroni and cheese options in our neighborhood.
Thank you. Move to file without objection. Motion's been made and seconded. Any further discussion on the motion to file without objection? Hearing none. All those in favor say aye. Aye. All those opposed? That motion passes.
Item 26, liquor permit notice for Sweet Spot, 17806 Detroit Avenue.
Ward 1, Vice President Anderson.
Thank you, Mr. President. No statutory reason to object. I am in receipt not only of the formal report from the police department, but also an informal communication from Officer Ortiz. So, again, no reason to object.
Thank you. Move to file without objection. Motion's been made and seconded. Any discussion on the motion to file without objection? Hearing none. All those in favor say aye. Aye. All those opposed? That motion passes.
Item 27, liquor permit notice for Sauce Pub and Pizzeria, 14701 Detroit Avenue.
This is another Ward 2 establishment, so I would refer back to the reports that I am in receipt of for both item 27 and 28. There is no statutory reason to object indicated, so I will move to file without objection. A motion's been made and seconded to file item 27 without objection. Any further discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor say aye. Aye. All those opposed? That motion passes.
Item 28, liquor permit transfer to Sauce Pub and Pizzeria, 14701 Detroit Avenue.
Again, in receipt of a report for this establishment, no statutory reason to object indicated. Move to file without objection. Thank you, Council Vice President Anderson, for the second. Any additional discussion on the motion to file without objection? Hearing none. All those in favor say aye. Aye. All those opposed? That motion passes. That brings us to the end of our docket this evening. We only had one individual signed up to speak, and that was Ellen Ream, who you all heard from at the top of our meeting. Therefore, I will turn it over at this point to the administration for any announcements from the administration.
Well, one important one, tomorrow at about 9:30 or 10 a.m., it's a pretty big day for the police department, culminating in about a year and a half worth of work and about a $600,000 investment. The police department will go live with their new computer-aided dispatch reporting system and data collection system. It's a significant upgrade in both platform technology and in use. It should give us significantly advanced integration of the work of the information the police department both collects and acts upon in the pursuit of its public safety obligations. So we're looking forward to tomorrow. It's been an enormous amount of work. Many folks have worked very hard on this. Sergeant Frito, in particular, has been dedicated almost full-time over the better course of a year to set this whole system up, along with guidance from many others in the police department, including Captain Hassing. So it's a big day. It should go well. The vendor representatives will be on site. Certainly it's been tested pretty thoroughly, but most importantly, tomorrow it will be used for the first time on a live situation. All officers have been trained, but like anything of this technology, training is one thing, becoming proficient is another. So this is really the first major step to a great leap forward. And one of the key elements that I would ask you to begin to think about is that the data that will be collected in broad forms will be available through a citizen portal. We have the opportunity now to set up that citizen portal. So we should begin to think about what that looks like, what we want our citizens to have access to, and how we might benefit them, and they in turn might benefit us in return. So it's a big day for the Lakewood Police Department.
Thank you. That's very exciting news. I hope that none of you ever have to test it, but certainly very, very exciting news to hear that that transition's finally in action. Any additional announcements from the administration? Hearing none. Any announcements from council? Also, yep, Councilman Rader.
Yes, thank you, Mr. President. This is primarily from my colleagues in the administration. I've reached out to some of you, including the mayor this morning, and want to speak with the law department as well, but I thought it'd be good to put it on the record that I've been spearheading a sort of push to work with the school district in developing a Lakewood flag and potentially a seal for council, as was the recommendation of our council president. And thought it'd be good to just put it on the record today and solicit my colleagues for any sort of input they might have into that process. We just started the talks with the school district, and I was hesitant to even bring it up tonight, but I thought it'd be good to bring it into the public sphere here and to kind of talk about it maybe as we go forward. Nothing is set in stone. However, Ed Favor and some of the school board members are excited about it as well. So would again welcome your input, and I think it's an exciting proposition. Our current flag is our seal on a white background. I think it could use some updating, and this is actually coming from a citizen who approached me during one of the Block Club parties and suggested this whole thing, working with the school districts, and thought it was a great idea. So just trying to put it in motion. So I want to throw that out there.
Thanks. And yeah, since it was referenced, when Councilman Rader approached me about this notion of redesigning a flag, I mentioned to him that I had also previously toyed with the idea of having a design contest for students in Lakewood for a council seal, primarily not because we need a redesign of one, but because we don't have one at all. So I think that this could be, an exciting project and one that's hopefully gets some kids involved in what we do here civically, and gives a creative outlet as well. So looking forward to working with Councilman Rader and students of Lakewood and you all collectively, hopefully, on that project. Any additional announcements from council?
Mr. President.
Yes, Councilman Litton.
Just quickly, because it is our first Health and Human Services meeting of 2018 next Monday, I wanted to plug it primarily because Director Gelsomino will be providing an update on Project SOAR, one of the things the city of Lakewood is doing to combat the opiate epidemic in our city and the surrounding area. So I encourage folks to attend and for us to find other ways to maybe communicate the results of that to date in whatever ways possible. Also want to recognize we have a block captain from Ward 3 here in the audience, Cindy Strebig, who's here, and just wanted to welcome you and thank you for coming. Good to see you here.
Thank you. Any other announcements from council? Hearing none, I would move to adjourn. Second. We have a motion to adjourn and a second. Any discussion on the motion to adjourn? Hearing none, all those in favor of adjournment say aye. Aye. All those opposed? That motion passes. We're adjourned. Thank you all again so much for attending. See you next time.